Let's start with a penny. I'm curious to know, how much is a penny worth to you? Is it worth 1 cent? Is it worth $100? Is it worth keeping around even though it only equals 1/100th of the United States dollar and can buy us close to nothing? In the 1900s, sure, the penny was worth quite a bit. You could buy postcard stamps or a dozen eggs. But today, the pennies have become the coins that we simply store, never actually using them to buy anything. In fact, today, a penny can't even buy a penny. According to the United States Mint, it takes 1.4 cents to produce a single penny. And according to the Wall Street Journal, it takes millions to produce pennies each year. This is money that could instead be reallocated on producing goods that actually have positive externalities and help society progress. But we still choose to preserve a coin that's become worth close to nothing. In 2002, when Jim Colby introduced the Legal Tender Modernization Act to Congress to rid of the production of pennies permanently, it was instantly declined. So when we had the option to transform our economic landscape, we were so quick to shut it down. Taking away this one coin from our economy would have only helped us progress, but we clung on to it because of reasons such as sentiment, purely driven by our attachment to a single coin. But let's move away from pennies. What if I was to say that there was something else out there that we're so adamant to conserve, to save, that really doesn't need saving? What if I was to say that there was something much bigger than just a coin, like an animal? And while we focus on this one animal, many other species in the world are ignored by us, driven to the point of extinction. Within the last 10 years, the black rhinoceros, golden toad, river dolphin, Caribbean seal, and Panda Island tortoise have all become extinct. But what's different about all these extinctions, as opposed to any other natural extinction in the world, is the fact that all these species had an equal chance of survival and really could have been protected with just a little bit of attention from us. So with that, I'd like to introduce the penny of today's environment, the panda. Yeah, that's right. Before you become completely swayed by the sight of this sweet bear, an icon for many different environmental organizations, including the World Wildlife Fund, I'm here today to say that it is in fact something that is harming our world and the inhabitants of it, and doesn't need to be saved. The panda is a species that, in fact, has taken up all our attention and all our resources and time because of the fact that we consider it important to save. I know, you must all be taken so aback. How can I say with so much ease that the panda is just like a penny and doesn't need to be saved? Well, that's because it doesn't. According to the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species, a globally recognized inventory for the conservation status of different biological species, the panda is no longer even an endangered species. It is now just a vulnerable one. And what this means is that while the panda is, of course, still vulnerable to threats in the environment, it is in no immediate danger of becoming extinct anytime soon. But we've wasted millions of dollars and so much of our time on its conservation because we're purely driven by our sentiment to its adorable appearance. Animal conservation today suffers from a concept known as taxonomic bias, where public attention and funding is misallocated and disproportionate among species. But this method of animal conservation, where the only criteria that we base our decisions off is our emotions, needs to change. And I'm here today to say why it needs to begin with the panda. Firstly, when examining animal conservation, it's important to see which animals need our help, but also which animals want it. The Chengdu Research-Based Center of Giant Panda Breeding is a research center in China that aims to maximize conservation efforts and help stabilize a panda's population for the future. But their conservation efforts have been a little unsuccessful because they've come to realize one very key fact about pandas that almost everyone here today might not know. The pandas are a species that are reluctant to breed. What this means in simpler terms is that the panda is a species that has lost the will to reproduce. So what's actually most shocking about this is not the fact that the pandas themselves don't wish to breed, but the desperate and highly unethical methods that the Chengdu research base have resorted to in order to ensure that they breed a stable population. According to The Telegraph, one conservation project by them attempted to use Viagra medication in order to force and enhance sexual interest just so that they could breed a population. And while it, of course, did result in some successes, I think that it's important that we ask ourselves here today, do we need to save pandas so desperately that we are willing to abandon ourselves from any sort of humanity to do so? While it is, of course, necessary and important to save an animal and prolong their life for the future, are we not only saving animals like pandas for continuous abuse to torture like Viagra? And the most important question of all, who are we doing this for? Are we doing this because they're a species that we've driven to extinction and we feel responsible for maintaining our ecosystem? Or are we doing it because of our attachment to them, refusing us to picture a world where pandas don't exist? Next, not only is it difficult to save a species that doesn't want to be saved, but the panda is a species with very, very specific survival needs. Researchers at the Chinese Academy of Sciences in Beijing have found that the minimum area requirement for a panda survival is 114.7 square kilometers. But to actually survive for an extended period of time and breed a stable population, they require areas much larger than just this number. But if you consider our own growing population, our industrialization, and the encroachment of habitats of species because of our needs, the panda's survival in this future seems unstable. To add, a panda's diet is strictly limited to bamboo, and because of the low nutritional value of bamboo, they're required to eat from anywhere between 12 to 38 kilograms a day just to ensure that they can survive. But bamboo forests have become increasingly fragmented over the last decade, which means that they become reduced in sizes. And the investment required to be made by us is far too costly to both our time and our resources that could be allocated to other species in actual dire need. But of course, on the contrary, there are benefits to saving the panda. Pandas are said to play an iconic role in China because they spread seeds and help vegetation grow in bamboo forests. And since they're an iconic species, they draw in ecotourism, which can help draw in money that's reallocated to conservation projects that will help them stabilize a population. But such a small benefit is too far insignificant in the bigger picture. Pandas continue to be abused and tortured to medication and other methods just to be forced so they can breed a population. Our resources are completely allocated to them while ignoring many other species who are in much more need. To put the funding into a little perspective, I've drawn out some statistics. So, according to Time Magazine and National Geographic, Canada last year spent $1 million on renting pandas from the Chinese government. So this included supporting them with staff and habitat and food. American zoos typically pay the Chinese government $1 million in tax just so that they can have pandas in their own zoos. And if they have cubs, that's another $600,000. But such large amounts of money to be allocated to such a small species is so insignificant when you consider the larger picture of our ecosystem. So with that, I propose that we reevaluate animal conservation. It's very easy to pick an animal that appeals to the masses' emotions and makes us think that by putting a little bit of our money towards it means we're actually helping our environment. But that's where we're completely wrong. It's not enough to only know what we're saving. We have to know why we're saving it. So, choosing who to save and who not to cannot be a decision driven by emotion. it should be a decision driven by our criteria of factors. For example, we could choose to save species that are on the brink of extinction, such as the wild Javan rhinos, with only 60 remaining. Because of the fact that these species have limited time and are ticking by the second, they need to be saved immediately. Or we could choose to save species that are vital to ecosystems, which we call keystone species, such as mangroves, because they support other species to stay alive, or even sea otters, because they eat sea urchins and help keep kelp forests healthy. Or we could save species who have the easiest chance of survival, like the Maud Island frog in New Zealand, that could really just be kept alive as long as they're protected from invasive species that threaten them. Species like the Maud Island don't require any investment to be made in building a forest or creating larger habitats. So as you can see, there are many ways to evaluate conservation. Over 20,000 species are at risk of extinction today. And to save each and every single one of them is near impossible. But that is what makes the decision of conservation so significant. With our technology and knowledge, the change can really begin with us today. The choice of conservation lies in our hands. And I know for a fact that we can make that choice based on something far more significant than just an appearance. Thank you.